Cold Case Chronicles. For 65 years, a 4-year-old boy lay in the ground, with no name on his headstone, not unknown, not a placeholder, nothing at all. Just a small grave that hundreds of Philadelphia homicide detectives, over generations, visited like it was a duty passed down in a will. He was found naked, beaten, and folded into a cardboard box that once held a department store in it. And somehow, in a city of 2 million people, not one person ever asked where he went. This is the story of the boy in the box, and how DNA finally did what 65 years of detective work couldn't. Every name deserves to be remembered. And his took longer than almost anyone's in American history to come back to him. On February 25, 1957, a college student named Frederick Benonis was walking through the woods off Susquehanna Road in Philadelphia's Fox Chase neighborhood. He was following a rabbit into the brush when he saw it. A cardboard box, the kind J.C. Penney used to ship baby bassinets, sitting half hidden in the underbrush. Inside was the body of a small boy, wrapped in a plaid blanket. He was naked, he'd been badly beaten. And here's the detail that still doesn't sit right with anyone who studied this case. Whoever put him there had also groomed him. His hair had been recently cut. His fingernails were trimmed. His eyes were closed and his arms were folded gently across his stomach, like someone was preparing him for a funeral, not disposing of a murder victim. A medical examiner would later say it looked like whoever left him there did their best to prepare him for burial. Somebody killed this child and then tucked him in. Police estimated he was between 3 and 7 years old. He'd been beaten to death, and he was severely malnourished, like he hadn't been fed properly for a long time before he died. There were old scars, too, from what looked like past surgeries. Someone, at some point, had taken this child to a doctor, and yet nobody had ever reported him missing. No frantic parent, no school asking where he was, no neighbor who noticed a kid who used to play outside suddenly wasn't there anymore. Philadelphia police fingerprinted him immediately, certain that, in a matter of days, he'd be identified. They were wrong by 65 years. The case exploded into the biggest media story Philadelphia had seen in decades. The Philadelphia Inquirer printed 400,000 flyers with the boy's likeness on them, and had them included with every single gas bill sent out across the city that month. 400,000 households opened their mail and saw this child's face staring back at them. Detectives went door to door. Investigators cross-referenced hospital birth records, school enrollments, even circus and carnival employee rosters on a rumor that he might have belonged to a traveling performer. A psychic medium named Joan Durham even got pulled into the investigation in the 1980s, describing a man with a distinctive nose she believed was connected to the boy's death. None of it led anywhere. The trail went stone cold, and the only thing anyone had left to hold on to was a nickname the press had given him: the boy in the box, or later, America's unknown child. The Philadelphia Police Department refused to let it go. In 1998, more than 40 years after he was buried in a potter's field, they exhumed his body just to extract DNA from a tooth, hoping future technology might eventually catch up to what they needed. It didn't work. The sample degraded, and the case went cold again. But in 2019, they dug him up a second time. Forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, who worked the case with a team called Identifinders International, later described what she had to work with. The DNA, she said, was basically shot. What survived was like confetti, tiny broken pieces that she had to network together, piece by piece. Like assembling an enormous Sudoku puzzle with most of the numbers missing, the break came from a place nobody expected. A public genealogy database, the same kind of consumer DNA site people used to find out where their ancestors came from. A second cousin, once removed from the boy, had uploaded their own DNA out of simple curiosity. That distance, A knowing relative became the thread that unraveled everything. Investigators traced the connection backward through the family tree, until they landed on a woman who, records showed, had given birth to a boy in 1953 who seemed to vanish from every official record afterward. Detectives obtained a court order for every birth, death, and adoption record tied to that mother between 1944 and 1956. Buried in that paperwork was a birth certificate for a baby boy. Born January 13, 1953. He had never been issued a social security number. He had never been reported missing, because on paper, as far as any government agency was concerned, he had simply stopped existing on November 30, 2022. The Philadelphia Police Department announced they finally knew who he was on December 8, 65 years after Frederick Benoni stumbled onto that box in the woods. They said his name out loud for the first time: Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Police said his family had lived near 61st and Market Street in West Philadelphia, roughly -1 miles from where his body was eventually left. His parents, Augustus Zarelli and Mary Elizabeth Abel, had split up around the time his body was found. Neither of them ever reported him missing. Both are now dead. So neither will ever face a courtroom for what happened to their son. Joseph had siblings on both sides of his family who are still alive today, and out of respect for them, police have kept most of the family's private details sealed. Here's what still gets people about this case. Identifying Joseph didn't close it. It's still an open homicide investigation. Police have said they have suspicions, but Captain Jason Smith of the Homicide Division called it irresponsible to name anyone while the case remains active. There's still a $20,000 reward on the table for information leading to an arrest. In 2024, the Vidocq Society, a volunteer group of retired investigators who worked this case for decades, helped replace the boy's unmarked headstone with one that finally bears his real name. Detectives who worked the case as young officers in the 1950s served as pallbearers when he was first buried. Some of their children later worked the same case as adults, still trying to finish what their fathers started. What makes this case different from almost anything else we've covered is that DNA gave Joseph his name back, but it hasn't given him justice yet. Somebody beat a 4-year-old boy to death, dressed him, groomed him, and left him in the woods off a quiet Philadelphia road. And that person, if they're even still alive, has never answered for it. For 65 years the only thing anyone could do for this child was remember him. Now, at least, they can remember him by name. If you have any information related to this case, Philadelphia Homicide is still taking tips. And if this one hit you the way it hit me, stick around, because there are a lot more names on this channel that deserve to be said out loud too. Every name deserves to be remembered. Subscribe for weekly cold cases.